Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive into, something I think we all deal with, but don't always understand, how our brains regulate emotions.
Right.
We're going to be unpacking a scientific paper that gets into like all the neurobiology of it.
All right.
You know, think of it as like getting a sneak peek inside your brain's emotional control room, right? Like, have you ever felt overwhelmed by like a sudden wave of anger, or maybe like surprised at how calmly you handle a stressful situation?
Right.
Well, understanding the science behind all of this, I think, can really be a game changer.
Totally.
Especially when it comes to, dealing with things like anxiety, stress, or even, more serious mood disorders.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Like we often talk about just like feeling emotions, but there's a whole symphony of activity happening in our brains to orchestrate those feelings.
So it's not just me being hangry. There's like a neurological reason why I snapped at the barista for getting my order wrong.
Exactly. And one of the key players in this intricate orchestra is the prefrontal cortex, or PFC. It's basically the executive suite of your brain.
I'm picturing a bunch of important-looking neurons in suits making decisions.
Well, kind of. Within the PFC, there are two main offices that we'll focus on: the ventromedial PFC, or VMPFC, and the dorsolateral PFC, or DLPFC.
Gotcha.
The VMPFC is like an internal judge constantly weighing the emotional worth of everything you encounter. It decides if something is worth getting worked up about, or if you can just let it slide.
Okay, so that time I freaked out because someone cut me off in traffic. My VMPFC probably gave that a 10 out of 10 on the emotional importance scale.
It's possible.
Yep.
And the DLPFC, your other key player, steps in to help manage the situation. Think of it as your mental multitasker, helping you stay focused, weigh different options, and basically be flexible in your thinking and reactions.
So while my VMPFC is sounding the alarm bells, my DLPFC is trying to talk me down from the ledge of road rage.
You got it. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Your PFC doesn't work in isolation.
Right.
It has a direct line to the amygdala, which is like your brain's built-in alarm system.
Ah, yes, the amygdala. Always ready to jump into fight or flight mode at the slightest provocation.
Right. The amygdala is super important for detecting threats, which was crucial for survival way back when. But nowadays, it can sometimes be a bit too eager to sound the alarm.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
That's where the PFC comes in. The DLPFC specifically can actually hit the brakes on the amygdala when it senses things are getting out of hand.
So it's like the DLPFC is saying, hold on, amygdala. Let's not jump to conclusions here. We need to assess the situation before we react.
Exactly. Now imagine what happens when this communication breaks down. Think about conditions like PTSD, where the amygdala is basically stuck in overdrive, perceiving threats everywhere, even when there's no real danger.
Wow. Yeah, I'm starting to see how this can have a huge impact on mental health, but it sounds like the PFC is doing a lot of heavy lifting here.
It does.
Are there any other brain regions involved in this emotional balancing act?
Absolutely. There's another crucial player in all of this, the hippocampus.
Okay.
You probably know it's involved in memory, but it also plays a vital role in putting emotions into context. Think of it as your brain's librarian pulling up relevant files from past experiences to help you make sense of your current emotional state.
So if I'm confronted with a situation that triggers fear, the hippocampus is the one whispering, hey, remember that time you thought a spider was in your shoe, but it was just a fuzzy sock? Maybe take a breath before you scream.
Precisely. The hippocampus is constantly comparing the present situation to past experiences, helping to refine your emotional response.
Okay.
And it plays a key role in something called fear extinction.
Fear extinction? That sounds promising.
It is. It's basically the process of learning that something you once feared is no longer a threat.
Okay.
The hippocampus works with the PFC to quiet down the amygdala's response to those previously feared stimuli.
So it's like retraining my brain to not overreact to things that aren't actually dangerous.
That's a great way to put it. But just like with any well-oiled machine, things can go wrong. When the hippocampus is impaired, maybe due to chronic stress, it's not as effective at providing that reassuring context. And the fear lingers even when it shouldn't.
This is making me rethink how I handle stress. Okay, so we've got the PFC, the amygdala, and the hippocampus all playing key roles in this emotional symphony.
They are.
Are there any other instruments in this brain orchestra we should know about?
There's one more key player we need to talk about: the insula.
Okay.
While the other regions are busy figuring out what's going on in the outside world,
Right.
the insula is tuned in to your internal world, your bodily sensations.
So it's like the insula is my brain's personal physician, constantly checking my pulse and reporting back.
Exactly. It's all about interoception. Your awareness of your body's internal state, feeling butterflies in your stomach before a presentation.
Yeah.
That's the insula letting you know something's up.
So it's not just my mind racing before a big presentation. My body is actually sending signals too.
Yeah, absolutely. The anterior insula, a particular part of the insula, is especially good at connecting those bodily sensations to your emotional experience. That racing heart could mean you're excited, nervous, or scared. The insula helps you make sense of it all.
This is fascinating. So the insula is constantly sending updates to the PFC like, hey, heart rate is spiking, palms are sweaty. Something's definitely going on here.
Exactly. And the PFC, using information from the amygdala, hippocampus, and insula, figures out how to respond. It's a constant back and forth communication.
Gotcha.
But if this connection gets disrupted, things can get tricky.
Like how?
For example, people with anxiety often misinterpret normal bodily sensations, like a slightly faster heart rate, as a sign of impending doom.
So their internal alarm system is basically on high alert, making them feel anxious even when there's no real threat.
That's a good way to put it. And this highlights how important the insula's connection to the PFC is for regulating those emotional responses. Now, we've talked about these different parts of the brain as individual players, but the real magic happens when they start working together.
Like a brain supergroup.
Exactly. These individual players form intricate networks like communication highways that allow different parts of the brain to talk to each other and coordinate their efforts.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these brain networks and how they come together to influence our emotions.
Well, one of the most important networks is the PFC amygdala circuit. It's all about that top-down control we talked about earlier, where the PFC tries to keep the amygdala in check. So it's not just about these regions existing, but how well they communicate with each other that determines our emotional stability.
You gotta think of it like this.
Okay,
so it's like the PFC is the coach and the amygdala is the star player who sometimes needs to be benched to prevent a foul.
That's a great analogy. When this communication is strong, the PFC can effectively regulate the amygdala's responses, keeping things balanced. But when this connection weakens, the amygdala can run wild, leading to problems like anxiety disorders.
So it's not just about having these brain regions, but also the strength of the connections between them. That's fascinating.
Exactly. And it's in these connections that we see the power of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and adapt. Think about how cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, works.
TBT, yeah, I've heard of that. It's a type of therapy, right?
It is. And it's been incredibly successful in treating a range of mental health conditions because it essentially helps rewire those neural pathways. CBT helps people identify and change negative thought patterns and develop healthier coping mechanisms.
So instead of letting my amygdala hijack my brain every time I hit a traffic jam, CBT can help me train my PFC to take control and choose a calmer response.
Exactly. And studies have shown that CBT actually strengthens the PFC amygdala circuit, making it more efficient at regulating those emotional responses. But the PFC amygdala network isn't the only one playing a role in our emotional well-being.
There are more. Wow, this is really complex.
It is, but also incredibly elegant. Think about the hippocampus amygdala partnership. Remember how the hippocampus provides that all-important context, helping us distinguish between real threats and false alarms based on our past experiences?
Right, like my hippocampus reminding me that spiders are more afraid of me than I am of them, even though they're creepy crawly.
Exactly. This partnership is particularly important for fear extinction, the process of unlearning a fear response. The hippocampus basically reassures the amygdala that a particular situation is safe, helping reduce the fear.
So it's like a calming voice of reason saying, hey, we've been here before, it's all good.
Precisely. But imagine what happens when this communication breaks down, which can happen in PTSD, for example. The fear persists even when there's no real danger, because the hippocampus isn't effectively communicating with the amygdala.
It makes you realize how crucial it is to take care of our mental health to protect these intricate systems in our brains.
It really does. And then there's another fascinating partnership, the PFC-insula connection, which integrates our thoughts with our gut feelings.
So this is where my head and my heart finally agree on something.
In a way, yes. The insula is constantly sending real-time updates about your internal state, your heart rate, your breathing those butterflies in your stomach to the PFC. The PFC then uses this information, along with input from other regions like the amygdala and hippocampus, to make decisions about how to respond.
So it's like a team meeting in my brain with the PFC as the CEO, taking in reports from the amygdala, hippocampus, and insula before making a final call.
Exactly. And when this team is working well, you experience a sense of emotional balance. But when there's miscommunication, things can go awry.
So what happens when the lines of communication get crossed?
Well, imagine someone with anxiety. Their insula might be sending accurate signals about their body's response to a situation, maybe a slight increase in heart rate. But their PFC, influenced by a hyperactive amygdala, interprets this as a major threat. This can lead to a spiral of anxious thoughts and feelings, even though the initial trigger wasn't actually dangerous.
So it's not just about the signals themselves, but how they're interpreted and acted upon by different parts of the brain. That's fascinating.
It is. And it highlights how important it is to develop self-awareness, to pay attention to both our physical sensations and our thoughts, to better understand our emotional responses. But there are a couple more important networks we need to talk about that add even more layers to this whole emotional symphony.
Okay, I'm ready for more. Hit me with those brain networks.
Well, there's the default mode network, or DMN, which you can think of as your brain's me time network. It's active when you're daydreaming, reflecting on the past, or thinking about the future. It's essential for self-awareness and introspection.
So that's why I get my best ideas in the shower when my mind is wandering.
It's possible. But while the DMN is important for self-reflection, overactivity in this network has been linked to rumination, getting stuck in a loop of negative thoughts.
So that's why I can't stop replaying that embarrassing moment from last week over and over again in my head.
It could be. And this is particularly relevant in conditions like depression, where rumination is a common symptom.
So finding ways to manage that me time network to prevent it from spiraling into negative territory is crucial for maintaining emotional well-being.
Exactly. And then there's the salience network, which helps you prioritize what's emotionally important in your environment. It's like your brain's spotlight, highlighting what deserves your attention.
So it's the one that helps me decide if I should focus on the fact that I burnt dinner or the fact that I just won the lottery.
Exactly. It helps you filter out the noise and focus on what truly matters. But when this network is dysregulated, people can have difficulty distinguishing between what's important and what's not, leading to emotional overwhelm and difficulty regulating their responses.
So it's like my brain is stuck in a state of information overload, unable to prioritize what deserves my attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this can be especially challenging in today's world, where we're constantly bombarded with information and stimulation. Now, I know there's a lot to take in, but understanding these networks helps us see how interconnected everything is when it comes to emotion regulation.
It really is mind-blowing. But I have to ask, with all this complexity, are we just at the mercy of our brain chemistry? Is there anything we can do to improve how our brains regulate emotions?
That's a great question. And the good news is that we're not powerless. There are things we can do to support these intricate systems and improve our emotional well-being.
Okay, I'm all ears. Give me the tools to take control of my emotional brain.
Well, one of the most exciting areas is neuroimaging. Techniques like fMRI and PE scans allow us to see these brain regions and networks in action, which is giving us incredible insights into how they function in both healthy and dysregulated states.
So we can actually watch the brain as it's regulating emotions. That's incredible.
It is. And this is leading to the development of new therapeutic approaches. We've already talked about CBT, but there are other promising interventions as well.
Like what?
Mindfulness-based interventions, like meditation and yoga. They've gained a lot of attention lately.
Yeah.
They focus on cultivating present moment awareness and like a non-judgmental observation of your thoughts and feelings.
So it's about learning to observe my emotions without getting swept away by them.
Exactly. And it's not just a, feel-good practice. Studies have shown that mindfulness training can actually increase the connectivity between the PFC and the insula. That crucial pathway we talked about that helps us make sense of our bodily sensations.
So by practicing mindfulness, I'm strengthening the connection between my brain's CEO and its personal physician.
You got it. And this can lead to greater emotional stability and well-being.
I love that. So are there any other tools in this emotional toolbox we can explore?
There are. We're also seeing exciting developments in neuromodulation techniques, which involve directly stimulating specific brain regions to change their activity.
That sounds futuristic.
It is. One technique that's showing a lot of promise is transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS.
TMS, okay.
It uses magnetic pulses to stimulate the DLPFC, that key region we talked about that's involved in focus planning and emotion regulation.
So it's like giving my DLPFC a little pep talk, boosting its activity to help it regulate my emotions more effectively.
You could say that TMS is being used to treat conditions like depression and anxiety with promising results.
Wow. It's amazing to think that we can target specific areas of the brain to improve our mental health.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the research in this field is constantly evolving. We're learning more every day about the incredible power and adaptability of our brains.
That's so cool.
But it's important to remember that these interventions are most effective when combined with lifestyle changes that support overall brain health.
So it's not just about high-tech treatments. What kind of lifestyle changes are we talking about?
Well, prioritizing self-care is crucial. Getting enough sleep, eating a nutritious diet, and engaging in regular physical activity all play a vital role in supporting brain function, including emotion regulation.
So those basic healthy habits we always hear about actually make a difference.
They absolutely do. And of course, managing stress is crucial.
Right.
Chronic stress can wreak havoc on the brain.
Yeah, for sure.
Particularly the hippocampus, making it less effective at regulating emotions. So finding healthy ways to manage stress, whether it's through exercise, meditation, spending time in nature, or connecting with loved ones, is incredibly important.
It's like we have this amazing, intricate system in our brains that's constantly working to keep our emotions in balance.
Yeah.
And by understanding how it works, we can take proactive steps to support its function.
You got it. And one of the most important steps you can take is simply paying attention.
Paying attention? What do you mean by that?
Well, developing self-awareness is key. Start noticing your thoughts, your feelings, and your bodily sensations. Observe how they interact, how they influence each other.
So it's like becoming a detective of my own inner world.
Exactly. The more you understand your own personal, emotional landscape, the better equipped you'll be to navigate it effectively. And remember, this is a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs. But by understanding the science behind emotion regulation and taking proactive steps to support your brain's natural abilities, you can cultivate greater emotional resilience and well-being.
I love that. This has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of my own emotional brain, and I'm excited to put these insights into practice.
Me too. Remember, the journey of self-discovery never ends. And the more you learn about yourself, the more equipped you'll be to navigate the complexities of life with grace and resilience.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the fascinating world of emotion regulation with us. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep into the mysteries of your own incredible mind.